What up? I'm Chapter Puck, and this is the Braves TomaBlog. So I'm finding a bit of a niche on this channel with doing scouting reports, and I really wanted to do one on Kyle Wright because based on what other scouting reports are telling me, I don't even have that much time to do one. He's going to be in the majors so quickly. So briefly, I just want to go through who he is, sort of some of his comparisons, some of his developmental timeline, his skills, and what the factors will be for his success or his failure based on any of that, and then sort of an overall on what to expect from him. So who Kyle Wright is, you guys more than likely already know who Kyle Wright is. He was drafted 5th overall by the Braves this year, which they were extremely excited to get. He's a 21-year-old junior out of Vanderbilt. He's 6'4", he's about 210 pounds, and he's got a 4-pitch mix of a fastball, curveball, slider, and changeup. So when the Braves got him at the 5th overall pick, they were extremely excited to get him because most people expected him to go number 1 overall. So they were just ecstatic enough that he even fell to the 5th pick. And they gave him a massive signing bonus of over $7 million, which is $2 million above slot for the 5th overall pick. So the Braves made sure to compensate him for just slipping in general. They gave him number 1 overall money. So like I said, 4-pitch mix, fastball, curveball, slider, changeup. The fastball is his best pitch, as it is with most people who go in the first round. But all 4 are advanced offerings. He's really, I think it was the slider that he's developing right now, sort of more into a major league pitch, but they're saying that the majority of the pitches are already major league ready. It's pretty uncanny. His biggest asset is his development. It's the fact that he's almost a major league pitcher already right now. So I want to get into some comparisons real quick as well. The first one that I've heard a lot of comparisons about that I don't necessarily object to is John Smoltz. Now I think that comes in line with the fact that he got drafted by the Braves and they sort of go to John Smoltz, but I see what they're talking about. He's taller, he's got that wiry type of frame that Smoltz had when he was younger. Again, he's big, he's sort of projectable. So I see where that's coming from on John Smoltz. And John Smoltz started out really, sort of tall and lanky, and he really grew into his body as he got older. Now, Smoltz was a high school pitcher. Wright is a college pitcher. And just to go off some guys in my time that he reminds me of, here are 3 guys that he really reminds me of. Matt Moore was pretty much the same body, very smooth delivery, was very reliant on projectability. If you remember, he moved very quickly through the minors. He took a little longer to develop than people hoped, largely due to injuries. His delivery is a little smoother than this guy, but his body reminds me a lot of Corey Kluber. He has a very similar pitch mix to what Kluber was as well. Now, Kluber was, of course, a late developer who really came onto the scene when he was about 28 years old, but he's a big guy. He's a strike thrower with a large pitch mix. Throws a variety of offerings, and he throws them very well, and he throws them very wisely. Most of all, though, he reminds me of Steven Strasburg. Do you remember when Steven Strasburg was drafted? It's hard to forget. He was incredibly hyped, but he was this tall, pretty lanky. He was a lot skinnier then, too. College pitcher with an enormous amount of projectability and a great pitch mix as well. He was drafted in 2009, debuted in 2010, shot through the minor leagues. And he missed the majority of the next season because of a Tommy John surgery. But when I saw Kyle Wright and what the prospect that he was, I immediately thought of Steven Strasburg. As far as the developmental timeline goes, that's the most exciting thing about him. They're saying about midseason next year, or a little beyond midseason next year, he'll be major league ready. And that's extremely exciting to talk about. He'll be 22 years old. You guys know how I feel about this kind of thing. I'm not one for rushing prospects at all. Now, it's possible that the minors don't challenge him and he goes through the minor leagues like a hot knife through butter. Now, or he could struggle, and you know what, ultimately, it's obviously okay if he does. It's good to deal with struggles, but I admit I'm not looking for Kyle Wright to deal with struggles the same way I talk about looking for Ronald Acuna or Kevin Maitan to deal with struggles. He's a 21-year-old pitcher out of the SEC. It's a completely different cadence than when you're looking at a 19-year-old international prospect. So yeah, if I saw him struggling early in the year, especially if he's, at high A or at double A or something, I would be concerned about injury. I would be concerned about a blister, is a lot of times the case as well. He doesn't seem like the guy that's going to come out and give you a 4.50 ERA right off the rip. I would be concerned if that happened. I think there's a much higher chance that we know what we're dealing with upon first impression. A lot of times with college pitchers, what you see is what you get, and it works on both ends. A lot of times Strasburg comes out and does great, and he just performs great a lot of the time, but you have that on the other end too with Mark Appel, Carlos Rodon. They just haven't turned into much. So as far as factors that will determine his success, the biggest factor, and I think all of us know this, is injuries. He's a college pitcher. He's 21 years old. The biggest thing that you deal with pitchers of that age is injuries, and it's not even your fault if he has one. It sort of goes down to his high school development. It goes down to Vanderbilt. They don't have a huge history of Tommy Johns or anything. You just always want to be concerned about it. You want to be concerned about blisters. The guys that I just named, though, it is something to worry about that I just mentioned. Steven Strasburg, Matt Moore, John Smoltz, and I don't know what Corey Kluber was doing when he was 21, but all those guys had Tommy John surgeries. But more than likely, that's not going to happen. He's going to do well, and he'll get brought up because we believe he's ready, and he'll just pitch. And that'll be fine. Now, again, a lot of times when 22-year-old college pitchers get brought up pretty early on, they still have a lot to learn about pitching, and that will be the other factor, is that Kyle Wright needs to continue to learn about pitching, but from what we understand about him, he's already pretty knowledgeable as it is. But anyway, I go back to Aaron Nola. I go back to Garrett Cole, Trevor Bauer. They just had a lot to learn. They had a lot of coaching that needed to be done to them before they could really turn into the pitchers that they are. With Nola, he hasn't quite turned into that yet, but I still believe that he easily can. But I also see a good chance that if he moves quickly through the minor leagues, he could dominate in the minors and then just translate that to the majors. And he could pitch to a 2.50 ERA in the minors and a 3.50 ERA in the majors in that first year. Sometimes there are pitchers that come up that are young, and they're just sort of anomalies that just go right through. Think of Sonny Gray, Michael Wacha, David Price. They just sort of shot right into the major leagues, and they just pitched well once they got there, and they sustained it. The ideal development to me is Max Scherzer, that he came up early, and he wasn't great, and he wasn't dominant. He was just good. He was a good contributor on the team, and every single year he got better, and he got better the next year, and he got better the year after that, until you looked up, and he was one of the 3 or 4 best pitchers in baseball year in and year out, always in contention for the Cy Young. Overall, I obviously have no idea what to expect of them. This is sports and it's baseball. He could be great in the minor leagues and then flounder in the major leagues. We've seen a lot of guys do that thus far. Here's why you should be as excited about Kyle Wright as you are about any prospect in the Braves farm system, though, is that we started this rebuild 3 years ago and we've added a lot of high-end, high-ceiling talent. The reason to be excited about Wright is that he's different from all of them. He's the anomaly in our system. He's the thing that made us buck our trend. The Braves, they typically date brunettes. Kyle Wright is our blonde. We typically fall for high school pitchers, and there were high school pitchers, but we saw Kyle Wright and we knew that he was special. That's why I'm going to trust the Braves scouting department on this in particular, is that they knew that they had something special in Kyle Wright because they don't typically go for that. And they said, no, this one we need to get in on if it's available. And fortunately, it was available. Kyle Wright could easily be the best pick that the Braves made, and that's starting to become a competitive title.